meeting on Monday, February 8th at 7:20 p.m. And if you will all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chris. Do we have everyone back? Looks like. All right. Again, just because of some of our technical issues and the fact that we can't necessarily all see one another, if you guys would make sure you're using Board Book to raise your hand, we'll try to monitor, or I will try to monitor that as best I can. And then Assistant Superintendent Harlan will also be helping me monitor the screens for questions. So on board business, we didn't have anything on here, but I did just want to provide an update to the board members that and a reminder that we have our work session prior to our next board meeting on February 22nd, which will be an opportunity for us to review the applicants for our budget committee vacancy. And I believe at this time we have 5 applicants. So we are also talking about the need to have to adjust our time. Originally, we were going to start that process at 6, but we are thinking we may need to start around 5:15. So I just want to do a quick poll of board members to see if anyone has an issue on the 22nd with starting at 5:15 for our work session. No, I see 3 of you. Vice Chair Thompson, were you good with it? Okay, so it looks like everyone is fine with that. So Chris, if you're still on, or Assistant Superintendent Harlan, if you guys will just adjust that time frame for us to 5:15, they'll get a new meeting invite out for our work session. And I believe that was the only thing we had to address during our board business. So that moves us into our superintendent comments. And Superintendent Goff is unable to join us this week. So Assistant Superintendent Harlan is going to take this one on.
Thank you, Chair Butzner. Members of the board, I just wanted to give an update on some of the things that have been happening fast and furiously since we met last a few weeks ago. The first thing that I'd like to share and give kind of a shout out to Mr. Andy Wynn from South. He put together, using some leadership students, a day in the life video. And I'm going to give you the example that we have from South. We have all of our secondary schools doing videos that are specific to their school, and then elementaries work together, and Mr. Wynn helped tape the elementary one as well to show kind of really what does school look like. One of the things that we've heard in terms of concerns was, do parents really understand what it will look like in hybrid when your child is back in this environment? So these videos provide kind of a look of what that looks like, and I'd like to share that one now. So Director Tomsky, it might be helpful, because we're going to be showing a video, if we turn off our cameras so that it doesn't kind of stutter, and then we can turn them back on at the conclusion of the video.
Hi, Mr. Hunter here. I'm your proud Red Hawk principal. While this video will focus on what a day in the hybrid model will look like for students, I would like to explain the 3 different models that will be available in Q4 for you to choose from. Choice number 1, Albany Online. This has its own curriculum and is taught by instructors other than South Albany High School teachers. Choice number 2, the Comprehensive Distance Learning Model, CDL. Currently, classes meet 4 days a week, virtually, with your teacher live on your screen. When the hybrid model begins, This comprehensive distance learning model will become 2 days with your teacher live virtually and 2 days working independently at home or asynchronously doing work that your teacher has provided you for that given day. Again, this model will be 2 days live virtually with your teachers and 2 days working independently from your home. Choice number 3, the hybrid in-person learning model. At the start of quarter 4, the start of the hybrid in-person will be broken down into 2 groups based on your last name, A through L and M through Z. Monday and Thursday in person will be A through L, and Tuesday, Friday in person will be M through Z. On the days that you're not on campus, you'll be working on coursework independently. Wednesdays will be flight only virtually. Here is the video of the day in the life of hybrid. Go Redhawks!
During hybrid, whether students ride the bus, drive themselves to school, or walk, they will have 2 choices when they get here. Students will head straight to their first period class, or they will go to the Commons to pick up a sack breakfast before heading to class. Students will eat breakfast inside the classroom with students properly distanced. Students will have 4 classes each day if they have a full schedule. For each class, students will line up outside the classroom as their teacher does a visual health check and asks how each student is feeling. At this point, students will use hand sanitizer as they enter the room. Classrooms will be set up to allow social distancing and will follow the guidelines determined by the state in the Ready Schools Safe Learners document. We will not use lockers this year, so students should bring all their supplies, including their backpack and their Chromebooks, to each period. Masks will be worn at all times during the class period and throughout the day. Teachers will be able to interact with students, provide assistance, and classes will have your typical educational and social discussions that we have greatly missed. For passing periods, students are expected to socially distance as they head to their next destination. They may use the restroom or head straight to their next class where their teacher will do a quick visual health check for each student. Students will follow the one-way arrows in each hallway and only enter or exit through the correct door. If students need to use the restroom during class, they will be allowed to but must follow the arrows in each hallway. Each hallway will only have students moving in one direction, so students may need to go outside to get to their destination. Hallway doors will have either entrance or exit signs on them and should be followed. If more people need to use the restroom than there are stalls, students will wait outside the bathroom until another person comes out. Don't forget that when students return to class, they will need to sanitize their hands. Lunch will look differently this year. Students who are eating lunch at school will be escorted by their 6th period teacher to pick up a sack lunch and then head to their designated lunch location. They will eat with their 6th period class but will have at least 6 feet between them. Upperclassmen will still be able to leave at lunch but will have to re-enter the school through the main office building before the last class. At the end of the day, students will stay socially distanced as they head to the bus lane, the parking lot, or walk home. This is what to expect in a typical day on our campus in our hybrid format during the 4th quarter. There are 3 key points of safety that we want to emphasize. 1. Social distancing. We will not be able to congregate in groups during class, passing periods, or lunch. 2. 2-ply masks will be worn throughout the day, and if a student does not have a mask, one will be provided. 3. Hand sanitizer. Sanitizer will be provided and students will be expected to use it throughout the day. These protocols have been put in place to keep all of us safe. We are excited to see all of you Redhawks on our campus during the 4th quarter.
So that is just one example from one school. There would be a lot to choose from, but of the videos that are available and going out for students and families around what it will look like. Just a reminder for everybody at home and for you all that the requirements that you see there in terms of social distancing, space that's required for students in class, washing or using hand sanitizer upon entry into a new space, All of those things are requirements of the Ready School Safe Learners guidance. And those are requirements that we need to follow in order to get kids back in school. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this report. The next thing I just wanted to highlight for you all was a great suggestion from LJ that happened last board meeting about student forums and the interest around that. So wanted to let you know we are scheduling student forums for grades 4 through 8 and 9 through 12. We had originally thought that we would do this Thursday, but after some feedback, we decided we wanted to better schedule it for students. So we're excited to be able to meet directly with our students in ways that make sense for them. That could be during Wednesday. It could also mean meeting with students in grades 4 and 5 as a group, 6 through 8 as a group, and then maybe 9 through 12. Also possibility of meeting with 9th and 10th graders separately than 11th and 12th. But we're excited to work with principals and students to schedule the best time to get as much participation as possible. And just a hats off to LJ. It was a great suggestion, and I'm excited to meet with you and your peers. Also, some information, exciting information for us that we wanted to relay regarding the vaccinations of staff. So just a huge, huge shout out to Todd Noble and Neva Anderson at Lynn County Public Health. We held some mass vaccination clinics last week for educators and staff in all of Lynn County. So the amount of work and logistics in organizing these events and getting just that many people through is really astounding. And they have been incredible partners to us. Our own nurse Rachel has also been a superstar throughout this whole thing. And just, I really appreciate her and our nursing staff. So we surveyed our staff originally, maybe about a few weeks ago, around vaccinations and where they were. We resurveyed them on Friday, left that open. So our results as of Monday, mid-Monday, show that we had 819 responses from staff. We have about 1,100 staff, so that's a lot, but not all. We found that 81% of our staff have received their first dose. So we have 81% of our staff who have their first dose of the vaccine, which is amazing. We have about 3% who've had both doses, and add to that another 50 that had their second dose on Saturday. We had a second dose clinic specifically for our Pfizer vaccinations at the district office on Saturday. So add about another 50 to that 3%. We had 12% of our staff who said, you know what, I'm declining to be vaccinated. That was down from our last survey, which was higher by about a percentage. So that was good to see. But all told, we only have 4% of our staff who want the vaccine, but haven't had their first dose. And so that equates to about 35 staff out of 819 responses. So just the amount of effort that went into having just that number of staff receive their first and second dose already is pretty incredible. And again, I'm just super grateful to our partners who have made that happen. And we'll be excited to get those last 35 and get folks their second dose. So I wanted to give you an update on that. We also had a statewide kind of update on what enrollment looked like across the state and across districts last week. Wanted to let you know that statewide enrollment is down about 3.7%. And that kind of represents statewide about 21,000 students, just to give you kind of a scope. More than 25% of that, so more than a quarter of those, that decline is due to kindergarten. So we have experienced this as a district and we see that trend statewide. I can understand why for parents whose children maybe, turned kindergarten age, June, July, August, and you had the option to say, would I send them or would I keep them home? I think many decided, you know what, we'll sit out, we'll keep them home this year and we'll start kinder next year. But it is pretty astounding to know that more than a quarter of the decline in enrollment is due to a single grade level kindergarten only. Most states across the country have seen the same thing in terms of lower enrollment, again, with the largest decline in kindergarten. We found that for Greater Albany, typically we're at about 8,900 students in terms of enrollment. We are down to about 8,986 in enrollment this year, and we weigh in as the 16th largest district in the state with that enrollment. David Douglas, Westland, Wilsonville, and Springfield are the closest districts to us in terms of size. And then our demographics, our student demographics show that 22% of our students identify as Hispanic Latino, 1% identify as Black, 68% identify as white, 7% identify as multiracial, 1% identify as Asian, and 0.3% identify as American Indian Alaskan Native. So for those who have been around a little bit, you'll notice that some of our percentages have continued to grow, and those are Hispanic Latino students and multiracial students. Next up, I wanted to share with you some in-person timelines that were created with building administrators and ask for board support in that finalization. So when we looked at hybrid in-person timelines using the Ready School Safe Learner requirements, there are a few things to be really clear about. One, our counties, Benton and Lynn County, we have never actually, to this day still, met the metrics for opening in both counties. That's important to know because we're still in the orange in one county and the yellow in another. The reason that's important is because should school districts decide to open outside of those advisory metrics, there are additional requirements that then go into effect. Our insurance that we have through PACE, our coverage, we have under the understanding that we will comply with and meet the requirements that are laid out in Ready School Safe Learners. One of those requirements for any school district that decides to open outside of those advisory metrics requires that starting March 1st, on-site COVID testing is available for any student or staff member. So you can imagine the logistics of having 21 plus sites, have the materials and the staff that are trained and available to test, to walk students and staff through actually self-administering a test and what that means. But one of the things I want to make sure that our board and our public really understand is I think a lot of our parents and the community heard the governor said you can open schools, why aren't you opening schools? And the metrics are now advisory. Yes, the metrics are advisory. And if you open outside of those, there are additional requirements that you must meet in order to do so. And that is kind of where our insurance coverage comes into play. So knowing those things, I wanted to share with you our kind of hybrid in-person timelines. And I shared all of these things with the board earlier. But essentially, we have committed to a few things. One, we know that when we switch from completely comprehensive distance learning to hybrid in-person and comprehensive distance learning, depending on what families chose for their children, that a few things will happen. We need to have at least 2 teacher days for teachers to prepare their classroom for students who are coming. We also know that though we've tried our very best to ensure that students remain with their teacher, perhaps that they've had all year, we know that's not possible in every instance. The other thing that we know will happen when we go to hybrid is the schedules will change. The comprehensive distance learning schedules will change as well, because our teachers will be teaching kiddos in person and some virtually. So I think that's important to note K-12. The schedule for everyone will change when we begin hybrid, because we have this staff, right, who might be teaching an AM session of 3rd grade in person and a PM session that is virtual. Or we might have a high school teacher who teaches 2 sections in person of a specific class and 1 virtually. So as you'll see, we have essentially through March 17th, K-5 is continuing their comprehensive distance learning with their current teacher. We have the last day of limited in person happening for elementary March 16th. we need at least 2 weeks of transportation to be able to redo routes between limited in-person routing and hybrid when we're going to take, kiddos from all over Albany to their specific school sites. So that's why the last day limited in-person will end before hybrid begins for that transition. Teachers will have March 18th and 19th, which are the Thursday and Friday before spring break for their prep days. And then when students come back in elementary, we'll start K2 on Monday. We'll have their first days of hybrid. On that Monday in grades 3 through 5, kiddos who have a teacher change, those classroom changes will happen on that Monday after spring break. 3 through 5, though, will stay with their, will continue comprehensive distance learning for those first 2 days as we just get K2 in, and then 3-5 will start that Thursday. So we'll have, and our K2 students, if you think about it, many of them have never been in their school building before, or certainly not for very long. And so we know that they're going to need a lot of help and just a lot of explanation about how school works and what it looks like. For our secondary hybrid timeline, one of the things that we heard from secondary administrators, not all, though the vast majority, was that it was much easier to make the switch at the quarter than in the middle of the quarter. We know, though, that we want kids in as soon as possible. So one of the things that you'll find in this hybrid timeline is that third quarter is shorter by about a week. We have students continuing comprehensive distance learning with their current teacher through April 8th. April 8th on Thursday is the last day of quarter 3. Again, that's earlier than it would typically be. We have a grading day for third quarter, and then on that Friday, that was part of the calendar already. And then we have those 2 teacher prep days on the Monday and Tuesday of the following week. Wednesday of that week, in grades 6 through 12, they'll still have their advisory on Wednesdays like they typically do. And then starting Thursday, 6th grade will have their first day of hybrid by themselves in their building. Again, 6th graders have never been to their building. And then 9th graders for Thursday, for last names that begin with A through L, will have their first day. The rest of our students will continue in CDL with their hybrid teacher or their CDL teacher, whatever model their family has chosen. On Friday, then we'll have the other half of the 9th graders start. So M through Z will come for their kind of preview day as a 9th grader. Administrators felt like it was really important for 6th and 9th grade to have some time in their buildings before the rest of the kids came because they haven't had that experience yet. It is something that we typically do. So Monday, April 19th would mark the first day of the quarter and would mark whatever hybrid or comprehensive distance learning, whatever models families chose, would be the start of the 4th quarter on that day. A few things to note and just shout outs. I really appreciate principals really at every level have worked together so much to figure out what will work in these situations. I think about elementary, there are 14 of them, and to work together to say, okay, what do we think is best? Secondary as well, and in working together to figure out how we do things consistently across the system. Other things I just want to point out, one of the things that we've noticed, and I would just want you to know and consider, the availability of testing lately has been really difficult, and understandably so. It's kind of been all hands on deck for county health departments to just get vaccines in arms. Because of that, most of the testing that is done is we refer to the county health departments. So we've had a problem getting tests even for our symptomatic students, and have worked with Todd Noble, who's working with Samaritan, around ensuring that, especially for our students, for pediatric patients, that they are given the option of having a test and that those are available. We have made some community announcements in the last few days regarding positive cases for students and staff. It's important to note that we as a district make those communications available when there are outbreaks that are when there are cases that are deemed outbreaks by OHA. So the Oregon Health Authority every Wednesday comes out with a report. In that report, it will include outbreak cases in the region, in the state. We had 2 such incidents, and I think it's just important that that we're really transparent and our community hear from us when that's the case and not read it through an OHA report later. But I've gotten that question, why would you, not to cause more fear, but why would you name just these places? We do that because OHA is going to name those places as places that had outbreaks, and we just want to be transparent about that. And then the last I would say is I'm just really proud of principals and staff who've worked really hard to expand LIP opportunities for students and have gotten really creative around what that looks like. A shout out to transportation, who I know is thrown requests daily for more transportation and different transportation. And they always try to say, well, let me see if that will work. I know that what we've asked of them to do has been really difficult. And I just appreciate their kind of can-do attitude about it all. And then lastly, I would just say one of the things I hear, and you probably do too as board members, is it's probably the most frustrating comment for me is, you've had 9 months to figure this out. Why haven't you? And I would just want to say, we did have it figured out. And then the guidance and rules changed in August. And then when they changed, we said, okay, let's figure out it then. And then we did it again. And we're like, okay, we have it. And then it changed again. So we're on probably our 4th or 5th iteration. And school principals, we've asked 3 times, maybe 4 now, to change their blueprints with all of these updated changes. So it's not that we haven't had plans, it's that the requirements for those plans change. And even though the metrics are advisory now, we still have to meet the requirements of the RSSL in order to maintain an acceptable risk to maintain insurance. So I think those are kind of some important points, and I'll open it up for questions.
So really quick, because we were talking about the insurance piece just at the end there, I wanted to have you do a little clarification, because I know this was important for me to understand. And I think there's been questions we've been receiving, and I hear people saying that that's not an issue. And I think it might have been misunderstood from a previous board meeting that insurance is not an issue for us. And it in fact, and maybe you can speak to this piece a little bit more. I know you mentioned some of it, but we also, in addition to those having to meet those new requirements to continue to be insured with PACE, but also in addition to those additional requirements, we still have to fall within one of those safe categories that are put out there for the metrics, which we do not, and we have not yet met. And based on that, there has been the extra piece, and maybe you can clarify this a little bit better than I can, of if we were to have all of our staff vaccinated prior to going back, even if we still don't meet those metrics, our insurance company has said that we will be in a safe place to be able to open. So when we mentioned at our last meeting that insurance was not an issue, that is, if we get everyone vaccinated, it won't matter where we fall in relation to those metrics that are still expectations of our insurance. And that is for us to be able to maintain having PACE cover us as a whole. And if I've missed anything on that piece, Lisa, will you add in
really well? So insurance isn't a problem if we follow all of the requirements. And when we open on March 29th, if we are still in orange or red extreme risk categories, we will still, and we have asked, we will still be in the acceptable risk category for our insurance because staff had been vaccinated. And so I think that's part of the question. It's not an issue if we meet the requirements and knowing that we will fall within acceptable risk as deemed by our insurance company, right? Which is obviously different than the metrics. I think it's also really important. I know that folks have said, well, you know, for hybrid and CDL, why is it only half the kids? They're only going to go in person for 2 days, but not for the other 2 days. And that is a limitation of space. When each student has to have 35 square feet in a room, we can only actually fit about half of the students that we would typically have in a classroom in that physical space. And so there are only so many configurations that we can have to get all of those students in person and meet those requirements. And those aren't requirements that we can choose not to meet, and take on substantial risk financially and liability-wise as a district and a board.
So thank you. I understand you changed the fact that I said metrics and it was risk factor. And so thank you for that clarification on that one as well. The other thing that I know many of us have been getting questions about that I also wanted to clarify is we hear a lot about what other schools might be doing or what other districts might be doing. And we want to keep everyone apprised of the fact that we are looking at what other districts are doing and other schools potentially, and keeping in mind that they have different insurance coverage in some cases. A majority of the state is covered by PACE, with the exception of the larger school districts are privately funded by or privately insured. But those safety factors and those risk measures are different across the state. So we're in a different risk category than a lot of other districts find themselves in. And so there may be some variation to when and how different districts and different schools can open, dependent upon their risk categories and things that they might be able to do, or how quickly they've been able to get people vaccinated versus, you know, on our end where we've been able to get those from. Sometimes smaller districts have a little bit more flexibility for some of those things. So keep in mind that we are looking at those factors as well, but they are not a cookie cutter. Everyone can do the same thing just because the governor has said we can now get kids back in school. So
I think
there's a lot of,
depending on the risk factor of the county where you reside, the requirements that would then go into effect are different. The other thing I would point out is that in our school district, we have about 10,500 students and staff. We are trying to get into the same space about 20% of the total population of Albany. That requires a different level of logistics and planning than does if we're talking about one school or 300 kids even. The other thing I've heard, and actually spent some time with educators from around the state on Saturday that was interesting. And as we were having a conversation and people said, oh, well, we're starting or we've started. When I dig into the conversation a little bit more, what I realize is they're starting limited in person. We've had limited in person happening since the fall, probably upwards of 350 or more students. What we're talking about is the hybrid in person. And we do have some districts around us that are starting earlier, and some depending on if they were rural or not, and if they qualified under that for the RSSL, we're able to do some different things.
thank you for clarifying that. I just want to make sure we've got kind of that information out there, and we can go from there. If I think I see Director Ward had a question as well, so I'm going to.
Thank you. I've actually got two. Thank you, Lisa, for that report and for filling in for Melissa on that. Let's see here. So question number one is, I'm looking at the secondary schedule, and if the last day of Q3 is April 8th, and the first day of Q4 is April 19th, then what are students doing on April 15th and 16th? Like, apparently they're interacting with their teachers and they're in school, but.
Let me look. So students will be in their kind of comprehensive, will still be in their distance learning model for those days. And on the 15th, and for students, so if you scroll down, I think it's to the second page, if you're a 9th grader who falls on that part of the alphabet, you might be coming to school that Thursday. And if you fall to the second half of the alphabet, you're coming on Friday, because we can only get half of the 9th graders in for kind of that day by themselves. The rest of the students in grades 7 through 8 and 10 through 12 will be in comprehensive distance learning for those days.
Yeah, but what are they learning if fourth quarter hasn't started yet?
They'll be starting fourth quarter.
I'm sorry?
They will be starting their schedules essentially for fourth quarter.
Okay, so when it says fourth quarter starts on Monday, April 19th, it's actually starting Thursday, April 15th.
Yeah, and I imagine what will happen. So for Thursday, for example, when you're in kind of that new schedule with your 7th through 8th and 10th through 12th graders, probably all of them are going to spend some time to say, okay, when you all get here tomorrow, right? When your day comes that you're in person, remember to do these things. And this is kind of what it looks like. We just knew that for 6th and 9th graders who have never experienced campus before, that they needed to do that in person, whereas other students could probably do that within their classes.
Just jump in. Okay, thank you. And then my other question is and this is actually, if I was following what Principal Hunter said in that great video, I'm so glad you could share that with us, that the in-person days for high schoolers will continue to end at 1:40. And so the way that their schedules work now is they're interacting with their teachers virtually, if they're in CDL, interacting with their teachers virtually until 1:40, and then they have their asynchronous learning in the afternoon. So if they now have 2 days entirely devoted to asynchronous learning, why would they not then have 2 days entirely devoted to time with their in-face with their teachers and their peers?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that they felt like was really important was office hours. So it's one of the things that was required through Ready School Safe Learners, and that teachers and students felt like they still wanted to have available for all students. Some of the students on those in-person days may stay at school and do some office hours in person. Some may not. It's the reason why we've put more hotspots on buses, so that any student who is using transportation had the availability to be able to still engage in office hours, even if they were on the bus. But that was part of the conversation. Are people feeling like they wanted students to have access to their teachers during their asynchronous days too in the office hours? That was a big discussion at the high school level.
Okay, thank you.
And I can speak to some, and I maybe Esperanza and LJ as well, but it seems that some of the classes even now, even though they have that full class period, they still are allowing for some at the end of that class during the day now to be their asynchronous time in addition to later in the afternoons. And some of that is where they connect with each other in groups and work on stuff. And then the teachers are available to actually answer questions that come up from folks too. So I think that, they may not be getting full instruction for the entire time, but they are giving them work time with their instructors now too. So it kind of depends on the class and what they're learning and how much time they need for that. Director Roach. Your hand up too.
First off, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, for the work on this. I think it's so helpful to sort of give some of that background information again, to share that I think a lot of our community doesn't understand. So all the intricacies that go into these various pieces. So thank you for that. You mentioned the insurance and vaccinating teachers. I guess I'm a little disappointed that we still have 12% of our staff who don't want to get vaccinated. Was there a number that the insurance gave, a percentage of staff? So is it just like the opportunity to get vaccinated? Is that essentially it?
I think it was, in talking with insurance, what would put you at an acceptable risk if you were to open in-person hybrid still in the orange or red high risk categories. Obviously, that risk would be lessened if you had adults in buildings who were vaccinated. So there wasn't a percentage.
Okay. I just want to say, I understand that some individuals have reasons for not doing it, but as you're thinking about going back and the risk level that you're putting others at, I really want to, I know the school district, the administration can't tell people to get vaccinated, but I, as a board member, certainly can encourage it, right? Thank you.
Okay. Were there any other board member questions or comments based on the superintendent report at this point? I wasn't seeing anyone else's hands up on board book. And then while we're looking for that, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, did you have anything else on your report or were you?
Nope, that concludes my report. You have that in your possession. So if you have any other questions, it's just helpful information to have for you as board members, I think.
Thank you. All right, so we are moving on to our board liaison reports. Do we have any board members that have reports tonight? Director Aganaga.
I see Director Thompson's hand up there.
I have him on board book as well, so.
I apologize, Madam Chair. I'll hold my
Director Aganaga,
No, I'm good. Thank you. No, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, hey, just real quick, on Wednesday, the board, the school district policy rewrite committee met, our first official meeting where we we're working on Section J, and Section J is about students, and it's going to take a long time. We got through about maybe half to 3/4 of it. It's a fascinating, sometimes tedious project, because we're going to at least some degree every policy and recommending deleting old policies and whatnot. But just a great thing, and we kind of kicked it off last month. And once a month we'll be doing this, and then the schedule is going to take a long time. So there you go.
well, thank you for taking that on for the board, for sure. It's a necessary task. Is anyone else having issues with freezing up the Zoom call, freezing it all? No? Okay. Maybe it's just on my end. I just wanted to make sure the recording was still going fine for everyone else. All right. So I don't see anyone else's hands for board reports. So student board member reports. I will call on LJ first.
Perfect.
I can't see.
Yeah, not a lot has changed since the last board meeting. Students are still looking for answers, but I've talked to a lot of them, and a lot of them are looking forward to a forum so they can just get those answers that they're looking for, because I only have so much information. So a lot of students are looking forward to that. I like to see the progress in the limited in-person activities that we can do at school. That is super cool. OSAA made an announcement today that soccer and volleyball can continue to move forward. Unfortunately, contact sports like football aren't able to move forward, which I'm sure brings out a little bit of outrage in the students. How about just a question about that? I was wondering if there's anything we're doing to compensate for those athletes and students that are getting the bad news like that. Like if there's anything that we can do about the whole deal, because in other states that they have been playing contact sports, they haven't been super spreaders. So I was wondering if there's anything we can do about it, if we have a voice in that, or if it's just straight OSAA. But yeah, everything else is going pretty well.
LJ, that's a great question, and actually one I probably should have mentioned in my report. So in this state for athletics, there are two kind kind of entities right now that control what that looks like. The first is OSAA, and they make decisions regarding athletics and activities. And the second, just due to the nature of the pandemic, is the governor's office. So we meet, and actually we have another one tomorrow. Superintendents meet several times a month specific to some of these issues, and they have expressed their desire to get kids back into activities and sports. And districts do not get to decide what those OSAA guidelines or rules are, but we are required to follow them. So that's a tough one.
Superintendent or Assistant Superintendent Harlan, can you maybe speak to the fact that, or if you know, and I know this has been a couple of questions we get in relation to those sports and things, what colleges might be doing, and if there's been any way for parents or people to find out information. For example, if kids who are seniors this year in particular that may have had sports opportunities but missed out last year and are missing out this year for scholarship opportunities and things like that. Are they making exceptions, and where can parents maybe reach out to kind of get that information? Would it be something they should reach out directly to OSAA for some of that information, or where can we direct them?
Yeah, I would direct them to OSAA, and if there are specific universities or colleges that they're either interested in, I would reach out directly to them. We're not alone in this in terms of our state and others. I think there are about 12 other states who have limited athletics and activities either completely or partially. And contact sports is for those other states is not unusual, but I would have them reach out directly.
Yeah, and I know there's that concern from parents and students about their abilities in comparison to other people that are actually able to play, and what that looks like for their opportunities going forward. So I appreciate you adding that. So there are some places for them to go to ask those questions. Thank you for your update also, LJ. Esperanza, go ahead and.
All right. First, I'm just gonna give like my general update about what's going on in the school, and then I wanted to give the different opinions from the students about going back to school and when it's starting, just because I know a lot of these students don't feel like their voices are being heard, and not even just because their teachers aren't hearing them, it's just they don't necessarily know how to reach those. But first is Mr. Hunter has been giving out a 1 to 3 minute video every Monday for students and families, and it's usually sent to your email, and it's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Those are pretty much the highlight of my Mondays for the past couple of weeks. They're pretty funny. And South Albany is excited to celebrate Black History Month. Our social studies department has planned some cool activities, including a panel discussion, and I'm pretty sure me and LJ are on that last time I checked, and it'll be really cool to like be able to hear everyone's different things and all the different things that are going on. Just a big appreciation shout out to Mr. Johnson, Kaylee Whitworth, and Angela Spencer for planning LIP for our student seniors that began in-person learning today. I know I was talking to Mr. Johnson, he was just very excited to have those kids back. Approximately 55 avid seniors will rotate attending classes and cohorts. And this week is our Spirit Week. Very good thing, just something to look forward to. I know I saw a couple interesting people dressed up today as different characters. And 2 shout outs to students. I always say her name wrong. Kayamana Caspino was nominated to receive the Greater Albany Rotary Hardship Award. This award goes to recognize a student has overcome obstacles over their life and pursue the right path in a higher education. And Ella Galvin was nominated as the Albany Rotary Student of the Month for her extra work and dedication with taking the lead on students on South Albany's Bring the Joy gift drive, and it was a huge success. And to go into the student comments of going back to school, I would just like to make it, I guess, 2 segments of the students that don't want to go back to school and the students that are very eager to go back to school, just because I'm a big advocate on not going to school. And I feel like I've just been a little biased on that and not giving the students at South their voice and like just giving them an opportunity to, I guess, hear their opinion. First, I had a lot of students come to me in the discussion in class today that we actually had was a lot more students than I think I realized not wanting to go back to school and their parents pushing them to go back to school. I actually got that a lot today, which I was very surprised. I'm not gonna lie, most of the students don't want to go back to school because it's easier to stay home and they have that opportunity to just be home, be comfortable, and not everyone has that same opportunity as others. And I think that's a huge thing that I heard on the other side of the discussion was students who we don't know everyone's home life and we can't necessarily just say staying home is the best thing for you when it comes to this situation, even though it's something it's very hard to talk about because like there's a lot of different sides on this topic. People are always going to have their opinions and a lot of different feelings. And I think it's a huge discussion that can go a lot of different ways, especially with the students right now. And just to focus more on the students that want to go back, a lot of it was based off of not excelling the way they want to in class because the opportunities aren't the same online. They are given the study sessions, the hours after class to meet with teachers, but it's just not like that one-to-one being right there, even though it's 6 feet. And I think that's something students aren't realizing, that they can't just stand right next to you helping you. But yeah, they don't feel like it's the same education. And that's something I've seen a lot with my little brother, who's a first grader in South Shore in the dual language program. It's English and Spanish, and there's times where he needs a Spanish teacher and it's not always available. And that's just something that's been struggling. That's something that he's been struggling with. And that's just something that I see on that part of it. And another thing, a lot of what the students who want to go back are talking about is their mental health. And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been struggling that often with being online. Like I'm very close into my circle. I have a very tight circle of people who are keeping safe, that I know are keeping safe, so I'm able to go to see them. Not everyone has that, and especially their home life is not always stable. And I just feel like we're not giving those students an opportunity even to just have that getaway that I think so many students relied on. And another thing that was brought up was, I know there's nothing you guys can really do, but I just want to put this out there, was it should have been a choice, I guess, with teachers who just wanted to go to school and teach. But now that you're talking about the insurance, I don't think that was really an option. And students who just really wanted to go to school. And I feel like a lot of the students that are advocating not going to school are the students who are given the choice not to go to school. So they don't necessarily need to be pushing everyone not to go to school just because they're not going to go to school, if that makes any sense. And with that, that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you for sharing. I know it's been very taxing on our two student board members, just like it is, I think, for the rest of all of our board members and probably district administrators. So I appreciate you guys being the voice for people and trying your hardest to share all sides. And I think we all understand there's many sides to this and many facets, and each person and each family has their own needs and trying to facilitate, getting folks back, but doing it as safely as possible and doing it in a way that we're abiding by all of the requirements and maintaining our insurance and all of those pieces is really important. But it is helpful for us to hear. And I would recommend, always letting people know if they are in situations where they feel they would be better off to have that limited in-person time, that they reach out to the district or the school administrators for sure, and have some of those conversations. That's exactly why we're offering some of those services. So, we would want anybody who feels, that that's a safer option for them right now to have some of those conversations too. So. Thank you both for sharing your updates. Are there any other board comments or questions on reports?
Can I give some quick feedback to Esperanza? I just think your realization that maybe you weren't fully representing all of the viewpoints of your constituents is really mature and insightful. And I think it's an important thing to realize when you're serving the public, and it's something that I won't speak for all of my other board members. Maybe they don't struggle with it, but I do. To be able to get past our own personal biases and interests, and try to bring the interest of all those that we represent. And I was just really impressed that you were able to do that in this situation. Good for you.
Agreed. Director Roach.
I actually wanted to note that as well. I think you hit it on the head, Director Ward, that, we get so bogged down with looking at one side, and we do our little polls on Facebook and see, 50% say this and 50% say this. And I just, what we're not doing is listening. And, I just wish our community could do take your lead, Esperanza, and just listen and share out what you're hearing rather than polarizing things. There was one little last thing that I wanted to add in as a board member report, is that my wife had her second vaccine on Saturday, and I just want to do a huge shout out to Nurse Rachel for the incredible work that she has done in coordination with the county health department in creating just a really comfortable, safe way for everyone to quickly get their vaccines. And she was just fantastic. So I want to do a shout out for her.
All right. So I believe we are on to our high school summary report. And is Carrie on?
She is.
Okay.
Chair Butzner, members of the board, I give you Secondary Director Carrie Tatum. Because we've been having difficulties tonight, it might be easier if we turn our video off so that it just doesn't glitch the PowerPoint. If you've been having trouble, that could be why. And I give you Director Tatum.
Hello, everybody. Can you see my slides?
We can. On mine, it's a little delayed. If you went, there it goes to presentation mode. Perfect. It's great.
I can pipe in and
Okay.
let you know too. I am following along in board book for the board members, so it is there as well. So if they are having trouble seeing it on the screen, they can refer to board book and they'll be able to see it there as well.
Okay, yeah, it seems like my internet might be a little off. So I just wanted to check in as far as the high schools. And so what I'm going to do is talk about the highlights at the schools, what's new, the challenges the three schools are facing, and what we are doing in our next steps. And if you're paying attention, maybe not so much to what I'm saying, but the slides, you'll see a lot of our teachers in action. So I separated the highlights into 3 different slides. And so we have Albany Option Schools. Some of the things that they wanted to report is that their students are doing extremely well. It's clearly a testament to the culture that they've created. John Hunter leaving there and Mark Hannon coming in is definitely continuing to carry that torch. We also had a parent inform us that her daughter made the honor roll for the first time in her life, and she was super ecstatic about that. And just recently, I can't tell you the exact number because it's changing every day, but I believe several students earn their GED as well. As far as South Albany High School, one of the really cool things that we wanted to report was that we had a student get a 4-year full ride scholarship to Yale, and that student was Rena Howard. Since I created this report, we've also had several other students earn some South Albany High students are doing some amazing things. South Albany and West Albany, for that matter, are doing a great job of getting limited in-person groups going. They started with the most at-risk students in each of the grades, as well as their SPED ELD, but they're continuing to bring in CTE and other groups as well. Most recently, they're bringing in their senior AVID students, which is just really exciting because those kids, I believe, are the first class that will graduate with AVID. And so it's really a neat thing to be paying special attention to those kids that have worked so hard. Spring and quarter 1 incomplete work is getting completed. They're doing a very good job of following those up, mainly Julie Foster Teeter. So shout out to her. And then we've had over 250 students take part in OSAA athletics, which is just really key thing that high schools have to keep students engaged and attending. And then West Albany High School, they had their winter talent show. Their leadership students, I don't know if you were able to drive by West Albany High School over Christmas break. Drove by a couple times and saw them with their food drive and their money drive, a couple of the different things that they are doing. And just really, really cool at West Albany High School that their staff works so hard to try to make it as normal as possible, making sure that the winter talent show happened, making sure that fundraisers that they do every single year that have become a part of West Albany High School culture are. A couple things that are new at the high school. So Albany Option School obviously has a new principal, Mark Hannon. They also were able to make an amazing hire of Florence Enigma, and she's our GED special ed support person. We have a new custodian there, and both of them are just fitting in very, very well with the staff. And Mark actually has sung Florence's praises a couple different times just for being so happy about that hire. They are on a trimester schedule, and the student and staff safety was the main focus when they came up with that. They also received title money this year for some targeted work, and they are doing some really great things with their kids. At South Albany High School, they have 2 new counselors this year. They have an increased partnership with local mental health agencies. So we're really trying to support those students with the different support agencies that are in place, and always looking to do some of those wraparounds. They're setting up and adjusting attendance tracking. Kelly Bassard joined South Albany High School staff, and she's really focusing on that. Like I mentioned earlier, CTE LAP programs are starting, and so that's just something really exciting because for a lot of students that are in some of our CTE classes, those classes are really what brings them to school. Some kids it's athletics, some kids it's academics, and some kids it's really our CTE programs. And then the weekly Red Hawk News Network episodes have begun. At West Albany High School, they've stayed pretty stable. They have the same admin staff and much of the same staff. So very, very stable there as far as programs. They're continuing the programs that they've had in place, even though we're in such trying times. And then the new building projects. As a matter of fact, I believe our kids will be able to attend West Albany High School in the new building when we start hybrid. So that's extremely exciting for that class. Some of the challenges, and these challenges really are seen across the 3 schools, so I went ahead and scooped them together, but they're just doing whatever they can to try and keep kids engaged, trying to get them the support that they need. Technology, we're doing a lot better than we were in August and September, but it continues to be, a little bit of a headache as we learn new programs and continue to adjust. I think all of the teachers, all of the administrators, myself included, are really missing seeing the students in person. It's definitely one of the hardest things that our staff are saying. I know that I'm taking every opportunity that I can to get into staff meetings, and I'm working with some student athletes, and so that's extremely exciting. And then again, the unknown. I think a lot of teachers, just because it takes so much planning to be a teacher and to do a good job, we're a little bit type A, I would say the majority of us. And so the unknown is not a place that we like to live in. And finally, as you can see, I just, this was a picture of some of our South Albany High School former volleyball players. West Albany, they did a gift wrapping and the winter talent show and their food drive. So just a couple pictures of those, a couple really neat things that they were doing over the Christmas time. And finally, next steps for Albany Option School is to getting those kids back on campus. It's really exciting that at AOS, they're going to be able to bring kids back on 29th. And so we're really excited about that. They're continuing to utilize their title money to support their students, and they're building upon the past successes of AOS. And like I said, they're already getting some kids graduated, getting some kids receiving their GEDs. And so Anna Harriman does a great job of putting out a picture of the students as that happens. So it's really exciting. South Albany, again, they're getting more CTE classes and LIP classes in, and then they're getting ready for hybrid. And then they're also planning to hold their class elections virtually. I believe it was actually at the end of January. So those may have West Albany High School, again, getting ready for hybrid. And they are so excited to that we have going on at the high school. And can I answer any questions?
Director Tatum, can you stop your screen share? And you might have
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, perfect. And then we can turn our videos back on, and Chair Butzner can direct board members if they have questions.
Right now.
And I can just say that talking to you guys for the second time makes it way less intimidating. So I'm happy to speak to you for the second time.
We shouldn't be intimidating at all.
I'm nervous. When I was going through my admin program, my mentor was like, I was like, when am I going to stop being nervous? He's like, about 20 years. So
most of us are parents and have kids in the school system and all those good things. Been previous teachers. So thank you for providing the report. I don't see any hands up at this point so far, but I appreciate you providing this information. I think, it's important we hear the challenges as they are, and that you guys are, being transparent about what they are. And we're hearing the same things, I think, that you're hearing from staff and students as well. So Director Aganaga.
All right, well, thank you. I really appreciate having a chance to talk to you, and I will see you soon.
Actually, Ms. Tatum, I had a question for you.
Oh,
Yep.
Sure, Eric.
So this report was a little light. I was hoping, the board makes their goals off of these reports, and that's a big part of where I get my input to make goals. It was, for me, it needed more content in there. I need more details about what classes are working online, what classes aren't, just because we never know when we're gonna officially open till our feet are in the door, and then how long we can stay there without closing. And so as a board member, I like to know what classes are working, what are not, what are the true technical difficulties that we're going through. What's our percentage of passing students right now? What's our percentage of attendance? Anti-bullying campaigns that we're still continuing from previous years that are goals. So those things I think we're missing from your report. And I know you're an excellent administrator, and you'll probably send an email up the chain to us just to follow up with some of these questions, I'm sure.
So I'll interject a few things. One, this report follows the same format as the elementary and the middle school report. And so my hope would be that in getting the materials for the board packet, if you had questions or suggestions, that you would make sure we have those so that we can provide for you what it is that you're seeking, because that's certainly not reflective of Director Tatum. That would be reflective of me in providing them templates for what that looked like.
I reached out earlier last week. Unfortunately, there wasn't able to get reached back to because I did have questions. And I realize that it's comparable to the middle and the elementary school reports, but it's not comparable to the previous years, the last two previous years' reports.
Right, and I thought that decision was made as a board. But again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Superintendent Goff to get those answered. I know one of the reports that's coming up for the board is an annual report on attendance. And part of that will look a little different this year in that attendance and engagement are kind of intertwined. So part of that might kind of get to what you're speaking at. But again, I would say, please feel free to email and we can get the board information, A, that the board as a group decides that they want, or B, just individual questions that folks might have. But again, I would say that would be a reflection of me and the template that was used, certainly not of Director Tatum.
No, and that's fine. I do have questions I hope to get answered because I did reach out multiple times last week, but we can move on, Ms. Harlan.
So I do want to mention the fact that we have, I appreciate the fact that we have these reports in a very little bit of a high level overview, just from a time perspective. Typically it's meant to be a high level overview. And it's unfortunate that we're in the situation we are this year and that we don't have as much information to share as we normally would when we're, in person and doing that. So if there are additional questions, I heard some questions maybe about specifics of technology issues or those types of things. And if those are things that, we'd like to see, we can always get that, those requests into Assistant Superintendent Harlan and get some of those answers. But yes, I appreciate Director Tatum, your work on getting us the overview and the basics, and then it provides us an opportunity to jump off of if we have additional questions. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And
I appreciate your.
If in the future you want any additional information, please feel free to ask, because if I know what you would like, I would definitely get it for you. And then I didn't get any emails from you, Director Ananagba. So if your emails are not getting through, I'd really like to know that. So
thank you, Ms. Tatum.
So thank you for providing us the report. We appreciate it, and you did a great job. And we'll continue to pose additional questions we may have as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight as well. All right, we are moving into our comments from the public. I'm going to pull these up, and we have, I believe, 5 comments tonight. And
Correct.
we have Vice Chair Thompson is going to go ahead and read the first 3, and then I will take the last couple. Just as a reminder, right now, as we are online for our meetings, the comments from the public are requested to be turned in by noon on the day of our meetings. And our next meeting is February 22nd. So on that day, anything by noon, we will go ahead and read. We have a 3-minute time limit. Most of the time they fall within that time frame for us to read. If they do not, we will stop reading through them, and the remainder of those will be available in our board minutes after the meetings. So Vice Chair Thompson, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to read these for us.
Sure. Okay. Public comment number 1. It comes from Jennifer Stadstad, Albany, Oregon 97321. Dear members of the board, I'm writing this letter as a parent of a senior. Please reconsider your mandatory 14-day quarantine policy for out-of-state travel for students and staff, regardless of vaccination and/or negative test results. I understand we are in the middle of a pandemic. However, this part of their senior year entails traveling to prospective colleges, many of which could be out of state. I'm also wondering why, if we can produce a negative test result after such travel, they are still required to quarantine. There are also many student athletes that are being forced to go out of state to play, which contributes highly to their mental state. If they wish to compete in sports, they have no choice but to leave the state. Many students want to be back in school, but also want to compete in club sports. As the policy stands right now, that's not possible. Thank you for your time. Public comment number 2, Carrie Harrington, Albany, Oregon 97322. Dear GAP School Board, I am writing on behalf of my student athlete and all student athletes at West Albany High School. While online school has not been ideal, she has stayed positive, excelled in her classes, and patiently waited for activities to open back up with any regularity. While understanding the need to have clear procedures and protocols in place to keep our teachers, staff, and students safe during this unprecedented pandemic, I urge you to reconsider the stringency of GAP's particular response as regards to out-of-state travel and the subsequent mandatory 2-week quarantine. Our multi-sport and elite athletes are having to travel out of state in order to stay relevant and recruitable. And with the ongoing delays and postponements of our school seasons, these athletes are finding themselves having to make impossible choices. Club sports have long operated in a complementary seasons in order to allow students to play both high school and club without overlap. That luxury has disappeared. Most club or off-season athletics happen as part of travel teams, meaning that these kiddos have to choose between club and exposure to college coaches and programs and playing for West. Multi-sport athletes are having to make choices that are similarly heartbreaking in light of the restrictive travel mandates. Left with school activities as their only option, these athletes cannot attain or maintain any kind of physical fitness with the practice restrictions from OSAA, and have ridiculously abbreviated school seasons to maybe look forward to. GAPS is one of only 2 school districts in Oregon that I know of that have taken the OSAA recommendations and adopt them as rule with full restrictions. Is there no way to accommodate these athletes while remaining safe and reasonable? The contact tracing and safety protocols that are being employed by the agencies and organizations hosting competitions are rigorous and regulated. Requiring a 14-day quarantine unless expressly exposed and returning a positive test seems extremely arbitrary. I implore you to look at these rules and the rules adopted by many other school districts in our state and consider a looser return to play process. GAPS could rejoin the rest of the state in getting these kids back into the gym, so to speak, and back on track mentally and physically. Thank you for your consideration, Carrie. And comment number 3, Alyssa Turcott, Albany 97322. Good morning. I have sent many emails, but a couple questions I'm very curious about. Watching other districts around us, including Salem and Sweet Home, which are just as large, if not larger than our district, with all of the posts and videos and emails showing how prepared our district is, why is our district different than these other ones? I want to know the reasons our districts are different than Salem. What is the reason we looked 150% prepared and didn't go to our hybrid model that was ready in September? I know there are students that are being allowed on campus in small groups. Is there anything you have thought to do for our seniors? Last year's seniors missed March to June. Our seniors 2021 have not seen class since last March, over 320 days. And I know specifically some of these seniors that had accepted major scholarships. Give them a chance to see their classmates that they've gone to school with all these years and brag about their accomplishments. There has to be something that the district can do for the seniors. That was the first three.
Thank you for reading those. Public comment number 4 is from Jennifer, and I apologize, it's Hess or Hesse, also Albany, Oregon 97322. Hello, I asked the board to add an item to the next board meeting agenda, communicating to the public any plans under discussion for fall 2021. While circumstances with COVID-19 are continually evolving, parents must consider education options now as private schools begin their enrollment period. It would be instructive to know what GAPS is considering, hybrid, full-time, in-person, or other options, and how the board is working with state entities and teacher unions to move toward more in-person class time. As a parent, I appreciate this gesture of transparency, even if no solid plans for fall exist at this point. And public comment number 5 is from Jody Yoder, also Albany, Oregon 97322. I am a GAPS parent with kids in 4 different schools, and they all want to be back in school. They are all struggling through this. It is easy when I'm at home all day with them, focusing my energy on their needs to desire the schools to reopen, but this is a parent's point of view. I don't think a lot of people understand that the ones making these decisions also want kids in school. There is no conspiracy here. I know the teachers want to go back. The principals want to see the kids. They are deeply concerned about the effects on our kids. I also understand these decisions are being made with more information and with more to consider than the community is aware of. I hope you as school board members will support the ones who are making these difficult decisions, even in the face of much adversity and questioning. I hope you can rely on what you know of the job that the superintendents have done to bring our kids through this historical moment as safely as they can. So that concludes our public comments for the evening. All right. We are moving into our consent agenda. And I see Esperanza's needing to leave us, so have a good evening. All right. Personnel, we have personnel and our meeting minutes on the consent agenda. Were there any board directors that had comments or questions, edits? I'm giving people time here. Vice Chair Thompson.
Sorry, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, sorry.
I was shaking my head. No.
That's okay. All right, if there is no additional comments or questions, that will be, our consent agenda is approved. Old business, we did not have anything. And then reports, we have an audit corrective action plan. Is Ashley joining for that, or she is? Okay. So we will turn that over to her. I understand LJ had also had to bow out for the evening, so I'm not sure if they've already left, but.
Chair Butzner, members.
Ready.
Chair Butzner, members of the board, if you recall during our last meeting, the auditors did a presentation on our financial statements. And during that time, they discussed two findings. One was related to our single audit, and the other was related to the financial statements as a whole. Anytime that there is a financial statement finding, the Secretary of State requires that the district write a plan of action stating how we are going to address the finding, and then the plan must be approved by the board. In our situation, the finding that we are addressing was due to the ongoing decision to not have an actuarial valuation done in order to calculate our OPEB liability at year end. While it is recommended every year by our auditors that we do obtain an actuarial valuation, the district has continued to make the decision to not incur the additional cost of the valuation, but writes into the plan that we will reassess this decision each year. So at this point, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if not, if the board could approve the plan, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I don't think Kim sees me.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get I apologize.
Sure.
But yes, go ahead.
No, I think Russ explained this one in previous years, and I guess my question is, what's it going to cost us to do this? And not that I understand audits completely, but I do get Russ explained it enough that I understand that the value to us is zero. So I don't want to spend the money, but I'm sensing it's coming to a point where maybe we better to satisfy the state. I don't know.
Writing the plan satisfies the state, whether we have it done or not. We can make the decision to not do the valuation, and the state doesn't care. They just need to know that we have a plan, that we've addressed it, and how we're going to move forward. I'm happy to talk to the auditors to get a couple firms that they recommend and get a couple price points for you to see the cost, and then we can bring that back.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I would suggest that I've not been on the board as long, but not doing it hasn't seemed to have caused a negative repercussion yet, and I understand the concept to some degree, and I think we should until we actually have to do it. And sometimes we have to do things. I get that. Sometimes we have to spend the money no matter what. But until we're at that point, I would like to not do it. But first, I'd like to see what are we talking about here in terms of dollars.
So Ash, will you remind us what we would be approving tonight is the write-up in the plan itself. But along with that, you would be coming back to us at another time with any additional information about whether or not there was costs associated with taking any of the actions that are within this plan. And we would have an opportunity to discuss those at that time. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. We need to approve the plan so I can send this off to the Secretary of State, and then I can get some costs of the firms that would do the valuation. And then we can discuss those. And then if you were to decide that you wanted to move forward, then we can move forward and have a valuation done, or we can just leave it as is. And then we'll, of course, get the same finding next year.
Got it. Thank you.
Were there any additional questions for Ashley about this one? Not seeing any, so we will entertain a motion.
Well, with that, I move to approve the corrective action plan for the audit findings.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to approve the corrective action plan for the audit findings. Vice Chair Thompson?
Aye.
Director Aganaga?
Sorry, I had motion discussion. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, Ashley, when you said, if we do it on our next audit, we have the same findings?
If we don't do it, we will have the same finding.
Okay, if we don't do it, okay.
If we don't do it, we'll have the same one, yes.
Correct. I was just making sure. I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Ward?
Aye.
Director Roach?
Aye.
I also vote aye. And I believe our student board members are gone, so we will pass with unanimous consent. And thank you, Ashley, for putting that for us. And let us know when you have any additional information about costs. That'd be great.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so moving into bond business, we have K1, which was the transportation facility. This was something that was presented at our last meeting, and we did put this out to come back as old business, old bond related business for this meeting. They were looking for us to make a motion, but I am curious to know if there's any additional conversation that we want to discuss in our open session meeting.
So I wasn't able to actually verbalize it when we were in executive session, but you did it for me, Kim, which was I think we were interested in allowing our legal counsel and HMK to have conversations about, what it would look like to hold the contractor responsible for this and maybe additional amounts. I'd really like, it seemed like legal counsel was needing kind of more information before they could bring a definitive recommendation to us. And so I would like to hold off on making any movement on this until legal counsel is able to give us a solid recommendation and to advise us.
Thank you. I know there was some discussion that our legal counsel wanted to ask some additional questions and get some very specific information, which they were not able to provide us tonight. So I would agree with us trying to move this again to the next board meeting in hopes of having some clearer information from our legal counsel as well. Is there any other comments from board members, or does anyone want to see us do something different than moving this ahead to our next meeting as old business? I am not seeing anything, and I'm sorry if I'm missing you, so speak up.
All the gentlemen were shaking their heads, so
okay, good.
We're all in agreement to putting this off till next meeting.
Thank you. This is what happens when your computer doesn't work and you have to use your phone. I only get a couple of, so I have to keep scrolling back and forth.
You're doing great, Kim.
And you board book at the same time. It's been a little crazy. Okay, so we will bring this back as old business under our bond business again at our next meeting on the 22nd. In the meantime, we will talk about having another executive session. We will have to likely schedule for a discussion about this prior to our next board meeting. And because we already have plans for a work session immediately prior to our board meeting, it likely will be something we will schedule outside of our normal board meeting evenings. So we will be on the watch out for an agenda item or a new meeting invite. Okay. On to new business. We have the LBL ESD local service plan and resolution. This had Superintendent Goff's name next to it. I'm assuming Assistant Superintendent Harlan, you're taking this one.
That's correct. So Chair Butzner, members of the board. So this is the updated local service plan for Lynn Benton Lincoln ESD that runs from 2021 to 23. So this plan is frequently updated, but it was recently just updated working with local area superintendents around this plan. So it essentially lays out what are tier 1 services, and then tier 2 services are those that local school districts kind of spend their dollars through the ESD. So this is your first look at their plan for 2021-23 and the resolution. This we'll be asking for action at the next meeting when this comes back for old business. And this is also something that has already been approved by the LBL Board of Directors at their meeting in December.
And this is an annual resolution that comes out every year, correct?
Well, so it's every 2 years. Every year,
Years.
yeah, every year though, the ESD does come to each board meeting to say, here's kind of what we've done. Here are tier 1 services. Here what you're purchasing through tier 2 services. And then on a biennial basis, they have local service plans where they work with superintendents and districts to determine the services that will be provided.
Are there questions from board directors at this point? Nothing? I feel like I should say going once, going twice.
Well, this will come back. This will come back to you.
Well, yeah.
A 69-page document that outlines that service plan for folks' reading pleasure. So.
Yes, so we will see that as old business at our next meeting as well. And if you do have questions in the meantime between now and then, feel free to direct those to Assistant Superintendent Harlan. All right. I think that takes us to the end of the meeting. If there's no other business, we do have a series. Oh, okay. Director Aganaga, go ahead.
I had one thing way back in the board reports under the committees and stuff that we're on, board roles.
Yes.
So I'd like to add Jackson Street onto that list. And if the board agrees, I already sit on that board and I would like to represent the district there. If we can make modifications to that, I don't know if that would be added to the agenda for next time.
Yeah, I think any update requests we might have for those school board roles for the committees and liaisons, we can put that forward and have them look at that for us and add any additions, and then we can
So I'll forward those to you for the agenda meeting, pre-planning a meeting. And then I also had one, I think it would be important for the school district to be represented on the HAC committee. I know some of our administrators already are. So, but just making sure that we're recognized that we're doing that. But I'll forward those to you for the agenda meeting.
You could go ahead and go ahead and send those to Chris and to Assistant Superintendent Harlan, and they can look at the process of potentially adding those.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. So if there's no additional other board business, I'm looking here to see if there's any hands. Just a reminder of some of our upcoming meetings. We've got quite a few. We have a mid-month work session, which is a training piece with OSBA, and we may have a couple other items that we'll add to that agenda. So we'll get that out here shortly. And then we also have, as we've mentioned before, our next board meeting on the 22nd. And in advance of that, we have a work session as well to do our interviews and review of our applicants for the budget committee. And then it sounds like we will be planning for an additional executive session at some point. So we will get all those out. Are there any other questions for upcoming meetings? No? All right. With all of that, I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 8:58 p.m. and hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you.